corridor. I'm slowly going to take you through it. I'm going to stay on script, which is a little, believe it or not, unusual for me. And but I want to get all the facts in there. And please, do we take questions at the end? I've sort of been in and out.
We are going to have a panel.
Yes, a
but
panel.
If we have time, we can always take questions.
Okay, so everybody put their seatbelts on. Here we go. Hi, my name is Liam O'Brien. In the fall of 1996, I returned to San Francisco, having lived for a few years as a professional actor in New York. I did Les Miserables for 3 years on Broadway. And I was living off the Duboce Triangle in San Francisco, literally just looking out the back window, when one day this butterfly flew by and into the yard below. One of those moments in your life when everything just made a giant 180-degree turn and you only know about it when you look back at that day. I remember following this western tiger swallowtail around for a while. It let me get incredibly close to it as it hopped from flower to flower. I actually remember it was on Cosmos, such a seminal moment. And I studied all of its body parts. I actually think I went and bought a field guide that afternoon. As my little brother Colin said in an interview about me, he does nothing half, you know. So, but even today, when I look back at this project, which is about 15 years old, I have no idea why butterflies rock my world in the way that they do. I just signed a contract with Heyday Books. I'll be having a book out in 4 years on 100 butterflies I'm painting for the San Francisco Bay Area. And so look for that. But now I'm off script. No. Oh, this goes the other way. So I joined the Lepidopterist Society. So now I'm going to make you all say this big fancy schmancy word, Lepidopterist. It's the D-O-P-T part that's always weird, Dopterist, right? So that means the study of butterflies and moths or scaled wings. If you were a coleopterist, a beetle person, you would be looking at hard wings, coleoptera. So the great thing about the Lepidopterist Society is that it's a phenomenal group that was founded in the 1930s. Listen to, I'm going way off script already. In the founding tenets of the Lepidopterist Society, Vladimir Nabokov, the famous Russian author, was also part of the early Lepidopterist Society. It literally says, quote, "We make no distinction between the amateur and the academic. We know one needs the other to move this along." 1930s, way before the vogue of citizen science. So that's kind of cool that Lep Society has always been a quiet and embracing, makes no distinction between the amateur and the academic, which is good for me. So, as you can see here, I am holding a net. And I just want to make it perfectly clear that I was hunting the Papilio indra, the Indra swallowtail. And some of you may find this a little jolting because the vogue and a lot of people don't really understand why anyone would pursue this hobby anymore, collecting. But I just wanted to be in full disclosure where my life has taken me now. And I also used to live in my own spin zone that I could I paint and illustrate from the insects that I collect, so it had served its purpose. Forward. Oh, good. My journal work started to get some national attention. I like to first paint the area where the creature is, and then later paint in the specimens that I find in the area. It's sort of a field guide in reverse. I traveled to 25 counties throughout the state and in my big white van, and I hope someday that will become a book. But now, we're going to get this, kids. We're going to get this. Now, San Francisco is my home. And I thought to myself when I was first getting into this passion, God, San Francisco, what a crud hole for butterflies. Most lepidopterists know this. I'm going to read this quote from On the Wings of Checkerspot by Paul Ehrlich, the famous Stanford populationist. Quote, "Telling numbers can be gleaned from the city and county of San Francisco. Of the 46 species recorded there before the 20th century, 21 have now been lost." That was written in. But unbeknownst to many of us, although many in this room since the talks have been given, we're losing our butterfly diversity at an alarming rate. These are just a few of, I'm going to get this. These are just a few of the butterflies that have kind of gone missing in the last 50, 60 years of San Francisco. In the top left, we have Lycana heterodia, the blue copper. It's actually a copper butterfly. It's not a blue, but it's a blue copper. This is the northern checker spot, the Closine palla. This is the purplish copper, and this is the gorgeous pine elfin. You can see this in the Briones Park. It's a stunning butterfly. All used to fly in San Francisco, all no longer fly there. I go to National Lepidopterist meetings. They see my name tag, Liam O'Brien, San Francisco County, and I can literally see the corners of their mouths sort of collapse to the side. Mainly because of this. This butterfly was mentioned earlier in Angela's talk. This is, you see folks, San Francisco, we are more famous for what no longer flies there than for what flies there. So, Glaucopsyche xerxes, the Xerxes blue, the first butterfly completely eradicated from the planet Earth by humans. Its main stronghold was left in the Sunset District of San Francisco. Already by the turn of the 20th century, people had noticed it was blinking out. Very rare by the 30s. And then isolated populations were totally wiped out in the buildings after World War II, and the Sunset District was developed down to the ocean. The last one was seen in the 1940s by the old Presidio Hospital. The top is the girl, the middle. It was known as the polka-dotted butterfly from San Francisco, as you can see here. And back in the Victorian era, collecting really was quite the vogue, and it was truly a female hobby. And everyone wanted the polka-dotted butterfly from the hills of San Francisco. That's the underside. This is the male. Yay, this is working. Okay. San Francisco, folks, is a very harsh environment for many butterflies to persist in. It was around this time that I read two incredible books that sort of changed my life. The Trees of San Francisco by Michael Sullivan. Kind of neat. You can walk around, look at all the street trees, and learn your trees really well. And then another book called Great Staircase Walks of San Francisco. I tell you all to go buy that book because it'll really show you parts of the city that you haven't seen in a while, and it gives you a nice little map to go up and down really cool staircases throughout San Francisco. Great Staircase Walks of San Francisco. And I got this idea. I decided that I wanted to see what was left, what species were actually left in San Francisco. I had gone to hear Dr. Jerry Powell, as one of my great mentors, a retired professor emeritus from UC Berkeley, and he said, and this is all good for you, learn where you live. Learn where you live. And I thought, okay, I don't like San Francisco, but sure, I'll go try to see everything that's left in San Francisco. So I wanted to comb all the remaining open space, parks, dunes, marshes, and vacant lots. What was doing well, what was thriving, what, if history proved correctly, was blinking out. No one had done this in a long time. And I think because of my background as an actor, I really have to tell you, I'm equally enthralled by our relationship to nature as I am the nature itself, as butterflies. Sure, everyone knows me as the butterfly guy, but I'm just fascinated in our relationship to butterflies. And sort of hold a mirror to it, and again, to my own behavior as well. So the zones where humans and Lepidoptera converge. It's kind of this niche that I really find enthralling. I will get this. Okay, pull. This was something I read by California Butterflies by Tilden and Garth. Not Tilden Park Tilden, but Tilden and Garth. Quote, something sinister is happening to California butterflies. If one returns to a locality in which the butterfly was found 50, 25, or even 10 years ago, it may not be found there now. If the areas remain unaltered by man, the chances of still finding the butterfly are most likely very good. But if man has moved in and built houses, factories, highways, or farms, I found it so endearing that they thought we were building farms in San Francisco. We will have to look elsewhere for our butterfly, if indeed it can be found at all. So that was written, what, 32 years ago, probably a little more to that. And folks, again, I was in Les Miserables. This was my call to arms. This was my call to arms. Go look into the areas. He says they might still be there. And no one has really done that in a while. And pull towards you. So, the first person I called was this lady. Does anyone know who this is? Barbara Deutsch. Great. That makes me really happy that a lot of people know who she is. Folks, you can only dream to leave the legacy that this woman has left on CNPS throughout the state. This is the first person who, in a small article in the Sunset magazine, literally threw a Molotov cocktail into the backyard of everybody in this room. And of course we all love pretty plants. We love pretty. Our species loves pretty. She's the first one to say, hey, wait a minute. Why don't you put the things in the yard that the caterpillars can eat? Why don't you turn your backyard into habitat? She really was the first person to do that. So Barbara Deutsch was the person, she lived in San Francisco, and I said, I have this idea, I want to see what everything's left. Now, sidebar to the sidebar, the butterfly on Barbara's nose there was taken at the Point Reyes butterfly count. That is, does anyone know what that butterfly is? I'm hearing it. Lorquin's Admiral. That's Lamentis lorquini, named after Pierre Lorquin. Now, Pierre Lorquin put San Francisco on the map because he came in the 1860s to find gold, and then there are hills. But this Frenchman didn't find any gold, but he brought his butterfly net. And he walked up probably Market Street. All of his specimens are still in the museums in Paris, but they only say the hills of San Francisco. We didn't have names for all these hills up there. And it is why, because Pierre Lorquin, who didn't find any gold, collected, we have 13 type specimens to science. One I'll be discussing a lot here, because of Pierre Lorquin. And now we have a butterfly that we've named after Pierre Lorquin, Lorquin's Admiral. So I told Barbara what I wanted to do. And she said to me, quote, green hairstreaks still fly at Grandview Terrace. Already did the brief sidebar. So I already, yeah, I'm an actor, I can follow script. So I set out for Grandview Terrace. She told me these things called green hairstreaks still fly there. I brought a friend. Now, the Grandview Terrace, along with the Rocky Outcrop, you'll see a map in a little while. Grandview Terrace, Rocky Outcrop, Golden Gate Heights, and Hawk Hill. These four hills in the upper Sunset District of San Francisco are the highest upland dunes in North America. From the top of this hill all the way down to Ocean Beach, no other elevation on the whole North American West Coast from height to bottom. Sand used to go all the way up to these places. It used to debauch. I love that word, to debauch sand. I set out for Grandview Park. This is a picture for me. I didn't see the butterfly there, but I looked down the street to the next piece of the chain. This is called Rocky Outcrop. This is just down 14th Avenue, this glorious piece of remnant California. Now, Jake Sigg, we all genuflect to Jake Sigg, once told me in an email how the CNPS saved this piece of land from development. They wanted to put apartment buildings because of the view. Quote, it was the voters renewing the Open Space Fund as Proposition E in 1988 who accomplished that. The Citizens Open Space Advisory Committee was turning a deaf ear to our CNPS neighborhood organization. Pleased to acquire this. It's primarily the assurance of additional funds approved by the voters that caused the committee to approve it. That, plus the fact that CNPS testimonies in the native biological value of the place made it qualify for significant natural resource area. We ultimately had to use eminent domain in order to do it. But it's really a you just turn this corner and this monolith of piece of California is still in the Upper Sunset District. So it looked a little better for me to find the butterfly. And boom, there it was. Calophysis dermatorum. The pictures get better, trust me. This was the first picture I ever took of the green hairstreak. So there it was, the green hairstreak. It's a breathtaking, beautiful shade of Kelly green, and it's about the size of a nickel. I first saw it on April 17th, 2006. Now, I know this picture says coastal bramble hairstreak for the common name. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. It's been confused, and as Art Shapiro says, no two lepidopterists can agree on what's going on with the green hairstreak complex. We're probably looking at a complex of species. We're probably not looking at separate species. So, if I don't shut up now, I'll lose all of you. I actually wrote that. Okay. So, over 200 days in the field, 33 solid species I saw, trespassing where no person should go. I won't go through all of that because that's a whole other PowerPoint show. But this idea started to churn away in me as I went to look for other butterflies throughout San Francisco. I had no background in conservation, but an idea, just an idea, one lowly person, and it began churning away in me, and I had an idea that we actually might be able to do something for this butterfly. Robert Michael Pyle, the godfather of American butterflies, and I'll be talking about him later in the show, he says, quote, as early as 1956, the green hairstreaks were reported disappearing from the San Francisco Bay Area. Today, virtually all populations in the Bay's islands, hills, and shorelines have been eliminated as the natural habitat has given way to development. This is a famous bird's eye view of our city from the 1840s. Now, a friend has pointed out to me that this might actually be a romantic version of what San Francisco looked like. And then I used to think, how did they take that picture? Does anybody know how they did this? Balloons. Balloons. Somebody went up and painted from a balloon. Isn't that kind of cool? But the reason I throw it in here is that it shows the old San Francisco, and then you can see the dune ecosystem out to the west. This has been filled in. But you can see all that habitat out there from 1840. Now, using the glorious Nature in the City map, which I'm selling for the project out there. They have a new one, but this is the old one. I plotted out the known historic locations of Dermatorum throughout the county. The historic record of Lepidoptera only goes back as far as the 1906 earthquake. But here, even if you can see the butterfly, once enjoyed a widespread distribution throughout. Today, however, things are drastically different. The three remaining breeding populations of green hairstreaks are at Rocky Outcrop, Hawk Hill, and Battery Crosby in the Presidio. That's it. There's no other left in San Francisco. The population out along the coastal bluff seems to have enough habitat to surge up into Battery Chamberlain near the Golden Gate Bridge and over to the restoration at Lobos Dunes. Lots of coastal buckwheat. Okay, so Liam, what plants should I put in my backyard? I love butterflies. Number one of the top 5 in the Bay Area, folks. Everyone say Eriogonum, Latifolium, coast buckwheat. It's the host for the green hairstreak, the Ackerman blue, and the gray hairstreak. 3 host plants in one, and then those little white pom-poms, everybody comes and nectars on them. Top 5 in your backyard. I need to be seeing pens lifted to paper right now. Okay. So, this is, the other 2 populations are up against a more perilous existence. Small and isolated, the Rocky Outcrop population and the Hawk Hill population will utterly disappear due to a major dynamic within the butterfly ecology. Both males and females are programmed to disperse from where they're born. Boys usually hang out nearby, but it's girls that mix up the genetics in the butterfly world, and they will zip about far away. But in general, if this female shoots into a barren ecological zone where she can't find her host, her life will be for naught, and the population each season becomes smaller and smaller. My idea was simple. to flood the area with lots of the host plants to turn this tide and perhaps connect these two populations so they might breed. I drew up this map. Hopefully it's the next one. Thank you, Jesus. I drew up this map in the August of 2007. I'm a visual person, so I just had this idea and I drew out the neighborhood. Those are the 4 breeding colonies that we have, and that's the Green Hairstreak corridor. Grandview, Rocky Outcrop, Golden Gate Heights, and Hawk Hill. Now, I brought this idea to Peter Brastow, who created Nature in the City, and he embraced it wholeheartedly. I must admit, though, however, I have no background in this. I don't even know if it was going to work. This is really important if you're doing things like this. It's one idea to have an idea for a community, but if you don't live in the community, I can't say that that sliver of land right there in between 2 houses that seems to be nothing is not being used, because that might be where we take the dog after work to go do the poop and the pee, right? So I see it as beautiful habitat potential to an upland dune ecosystem, but it might be being used. Well, different ways of looking what land use is. So somebody said this to me when I was first starting this. This is a great quote. If you don't have me on the plane when the plane took off, you can't expect me to be on the plane when the plane lands. Everybody needs to be on the plane. And you can't get mad at me because I didn't know I was on a plane. So, it's a great motto for anyone who's creating a community-based project. And I highly recommend it. Get me on that plane. Okay, now a little bit about the butterfly itself. The pictures are getting better, I promise. This is part of the Lycaenid family, or Lycaenidae, and that are the Gossamer winged butterflies. Those are the blues, the coppers, the hairstreaks, and now the metalmarks. The metalmarks have been lumped in. All ranging from about the size of a dime to the size of a nickel. They're all sort of a tiny, small group. The blues, the coppers, the hairstreaks, and the metalmarks. Our hairstreak, the green hairstreak, is actually more like a group of tailless hairstreaks called elfins, like the San Bruno elfin. So again, I'm going to stop talking. Okay, adults fly from mid-March to mid-May, and that's it. Univoltine, which is a big fancy word of saying one flight. It just flies in the spring, and then it lives as a caterpillar underneath the plant for the rest of the year. Its host, I did some paintings. These are my paintings. This is Ariadne latifolium. And then another one I like to throw in there is Seaside Daisy. Yeah, I'd say top 5, no, maybe top 10 plants try to get into your backyard, Seaside Daisy. So again, I know I'm all over the place a little bit here. Big butterflies go to big flowers. Small butterflies go to small flowers. It's based on the size of the proboscis, not on the native versus non-native debate. These are opportunistic insects. So if you want, you have to have different size flowers in your yard. Think of like a monarch or a western tiger is up on a pedestal, almost like a thistle. Barbara actually has bull thistle in her yard. Think about that. So it's a great nectar plant if you stay on top of it before you want to kill it. Phenomenal nectar source for butterflies. But I digress. So, its host, which only 2 plants, coastal buckwheat, like I said. She also will put her eggs on deerweed. Rough plant to try to get going in your yard. I think it's a fire obligate. You need some fire to get it going. So we don't even deal with deerweed within San Francisco's population. It's in the Presidio. It's definitely using the Presidio, but Ariadne latifolium is our main plant. For most of the year, this is what our, oh my God, I just heard pet voice, didn't I? Oh, look at the caterpillar. Yeah, I don't allow pet voice in my shows. No, I'm kidding. Oh God, look at the caterpillar. Cracks me up, pet voice. Okay. For most of the year, this is what our subject at hand looks like. This slug-like little larva is usually bright green with a rather faint yellow subdorsal line and a white lateral line. After emerging from its egg, it goes through 4 instars, or molts. Each one looks a little different than the other. And then, after it emerges, it goes after feeding in the spring, it crawls down and goes dormant into the leaf litter through the winter. Okay, put your seatbelts on. Here's my bully pulpit. Everybody go a little easy on the coffee in the morning on the weekends and going out and meticulously cleaning up your garden leaf litter. Really, because leaf litter, I hope CNPS is really embracing how important leaf litter from old natives really is. It plays in. We have sleeping caterpillars below the leaf litter. And I get it. It's rough. You want a nice clean garden, but you got to leave that leaf litter for the caterpillars if you really want to do something about habitat. So after the first rain of spring, it reawakens. It actually goes dormant for 9 months below in the leaf litter, crawls back up onto the eriogonum, then crawls down, pupates in the leaf litter, again, leaf litter, and then emerges as an adult in March. So, let's see. The underside has fine streaks. Hair streaks sometimes in San Francisco butterflies exhibit a behavior called hilltopping. This is kind of a neat party trick, and I talk about it when I do walks and things, but about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, most hilltops in the Bay Area become the singles club for butterflies. Butterflies are programmed to fly to find a mate nearby at a hilltop. Not all of them, about 80% of our butterflies do that. But it's a 20-to-1 ratio of boys hanging out, waiting for last call at that top of the hill there. And it is the girls that go from hilltop to hilltop and have multiple partners and have a full dance card. So it's girls who mix up the genetics in butterflies. Let's see. Now this is a hilltopping green hair streak, a strong hilltopper. They fly the site. It was important for us to note when we first started this project that what plants are these butterflies nectaring on? In general, like I said, small butterflies with small mouth parts usually use small flowers. Here it is on our native blackberry. And again, butterflies do not know the politics of native versus non-native. The butterfly, these are opportunistic insects. A lot of my work is crowbarring the emotion that we've put onto these things. Even though they're pretty, and I make a good living painting them, and I love how beautiful they are, they're an opportunistic insect, and there's a lot that's going on there, not because they're pretty. Does that make sense? So, it's important to note the different size plant. And again, like I said, small butterfly going to a small flower. Here it is on our native blackberry. Small point of interest, this individual shown here exhibits strong markers of the other butterfly, the Bramble Hairstreak. Brambles fly at Edgewood. I know we've got some Edgewood docents here today. You see a green butterfly at Edgewood? Yes. That's the Bramble Hairstreak. That's a close relative. It's not a coastal green. The brown notches. Okay. Okay, here we go. See, I told you again better. One of the many nectar sources is manroot or wild cucumber. Here it is up on Seaside Daisy. When this plant is bloom, I've counted up 10 individuals on a single, this was the manroot. Here it is on Seaside Daisy, like I said, which blooms towards the end of its flight. It's really important to find out single species have different requirements, and they have different flights. Many of them that come to your garden are generalists, multivoltine, they fly throughout the whole year, so you don't have to worry quite much about blooms, but certain blooms are really important. One of the most important that is kind of dismissed is when coyote bush blooms. You know, that glorious sort of fragrant vanilla smell? Well, that's one of the few butterfly nectar sources that time of year before we moved all the Home Depot things into our yard. Not that anyone's done that here. No, I know. Okay, so here's the Seaside Daisy, which bloomed towards the end. Now, here's another view of the corridor running north to south. These islands are primarily along 14th Avenue. I've seen single individuals at Grandview Terrace, Golden Gate Heights, but nothing like the numbers at Rocky Outcrop and Hawk Hill. Because, now comes a mystery, because these butterflies are such strong hilltoppers, and we've developed all the land up to the hilltop, these sky islands, are they there because of strong hilltopping, or are they there because it's the only thing we've left them in San Francisco? Probably a little of both, right? Okay, I walked the corridor, and I brought the idea to nature in the city. That's me with brown hair. Neighbors seemed unaware they had such an extraordinary creature in their yard. Okay, so here comes the actor. I saw this lady was bringing out her garbage, and she was putting it, and I was sort of sitting there with a clipboard like Jane Goodall, just sort of counting butterflies jumping around. And she came out, and she's got her muumuu on and her flip-flops, and she comes out and she puts her garbage in this thing, and I said, and I was sort of sitting in her backyard, which is a really natural area, open space, and I said, "Ma'am, do you realize you have a green butterfly in your backyard?" And she comes over to it, and she looks at it, and she goes, "Oh my God!" And she goes back over to the door, and she goes, "Larry, bring the kids!" And out come all these teenage kids and grandkids and stuff, and she turns and she holds my arm like your mom would, and she goes, "I've lived here 35 years, I've never even seen that." So that is a really big moment for me, because, as Bob Pyle says, it's not just the thing going extinct. It's the experience of the green hairstreak that will also go extinct. People used to be able to see this butterfly all throughout San Francisco, but now it's reserved for only a few neighbors in this Upper Sunset District of San Francisco. So that she had lived with such this incredible thing and had never seen it. The first moment in stewardship, folks, the first moment in stewardship is to learn the name of the thing in front of you. Take the time to learn the name of the thing in front of you. And that really begins, I never would have known that this thing would have made my life a whole other direction. Okay, bully pulpit. So we started to do some walks. And we started to do outreach. We wanted to see what the neighborhood thought of this incredible thing. Now, it's not that surprising to me, because Vladimir Nabokov, probably the most famous lepidopterist ever lived, only author on the 10 greatest short works of fiction and the 10 greatest works of nonfiction. He's the only author on both. We all know him from Lolita for the greatest work of fictions, but please, before you leave this planet, read his biography called Speak, Memory! Exclamation point. Speak, comma, memory, exclamation point. One of the greatest pieces of nature writing ever. 1936 he wrote this thing. He said, back then, he said, quote, "It's astonishing to me how few people notice butterflies." Now, 1937, when he wrote that, we have a lot more appreciation societies. We all, North American Butterfly Association, Lepidoptera Society. But it is amazing how few people notice butterflies, at least to me. This is a view from the Golden Gate Heights Park. And again, you can see these are sky islands that look straight out over the Ocean Beach district of San Francisco. We decided in 2008 to lead 4 walks sponsored by Nature in the City. And we wrote out the objectives of the Hairstreak project. So, number 1, to connect the remaining disjunct populations of coastal green hairstreak in the Sunset District by creating botanical corridors at street level, which will encourage both emigration and immigration between the populations, bolstering the genetic viability and sustaining of the species. 2, to reverse inbreeding of isolated populations, which is a known cause of local extinction. To rally support for the surrounding neighborhood and educate the community regarding the presence of this unique species. To restore native fragments of dune habitat. I had no background in this, but I say this all the time, and sometimes I save this for the end of my shows, but I just want to be part of people who try. We might all be doing triage. We hear a lot about apocalypse. We hear a lot of... But back then, before Apocalypse came, just, yeah, I have this idea, and these people have a really incredible thing wandering around in their yards. So these were the objectives. Fascinating enough, 15 years later, they still are the objectives. And the butterfly, I told you, they get pretty cool, huh? So the name is now reverted to Calliphus viridis, viridis being green, the green hairstreak. As Jerry Powell said, oh good, that's what it was when I was in college in 1931. So just when you learn those Latin names, they have a way of coming full circle back at you. The butterfly put on quite a show. Here it is nectaring on sea thrift, another California native which must be in all your yards. One of the things that has perhaps helped this butterfly hold on is the inaccessibility to Hawk Hill. Walking up Funston, folks started to notice that, wow, there's these giant tracts of unused. So I'm going for the big Voltairean ideal here, folks. I'm so nervy that if I see that, okay, you're not a gardener, but you've got this in front of your yard, and we've got this special butterfly girl that needs to find a certain plant. Maybe you'll let us put a few in your blank yard there. Notice homeowners not really quite using their front yards. This is the corner of Cantera. I envisioned it. I can only dream, like I said, that the homeowner lets us put it in. I'm convinced that if I can just get as many people to see this thing, its charm and charisma will help the attention it needs. Now, when I first started, and again, no background in this, I was listening like a sponge to any educator about conservation and single species driven projects. And Lorette Rogers, who from the Bay Institute, she was an incredible woman. So she says, when I tell her about this, she says, a green butterfly. You have a green butterfly at the center of your project. Liam, I am trying to get people excited about mud snails. And you have a green butterfly. She goes, that's as good as having a panda walking around in the neighborhood. And I kind of hear what she said. I mean, it's we're programmed to, we like pretty. We like pretty to come to Pretty Flower, like pretty at Pretty. And that's, we're not talking about mud snails here. A lot of the success of the Green Hairstreak Corridor is, again, charismatic little creature, right? Another target along the corridor will be people who are clearly, then this is where the corner of Cantera and 14th, the corridor makes a hard right, and 14th Street becomes an interesting split of high and low. We see some of the first Department of Public Works land at the bases of these hills. And one of the more exciting sightings was seeing the native wild cucumber come up through these narrow beds. Ultimately, we hope to incorporate more plantings along these slots. The walls make the artist in me dream of murals and things like that, but telling the plight of the butterfly, telling the plight of all butterflies of San Francisco. We had the fortunate Robert Michael Pott, founder of the Xerxes Society, who Angela was talking about earlier. He had heard about the Green Hairstreak Corridor, and he wanted to come out and hear about it. He was doing his big year, which culminated in a book called Mariposa Road. And he got out of his car, he pulled his binoculars out, he saw Green Hairstreak, and he said, number 14. So that was a huge thing. He's out-questioned the most famous living lepidopterist, and out of the numerous field guides and works of fiction, the founder of the Xerxes Society, the Conservation Group for the Protection of Threatened Invertebrates. Let me put it this way, I think I've made it clear. If we were trying to save a primate in the sunset, this would be like having Jane Goodall show up. So, let's see, that went... We were fortunate enough that day at the top of Rocky Outcrop to witness a rare thing, a mating couple. Amber House of Brink. And again, folks, I'm not fudging the color there. That's really what they look like. When they're fresh, they have a teal blue. You see sort of that teal blue into the green? What kind of plant? Eriogonum latifolium. They actually use it, so most butterflies will go away from their host, but this is one of the few, like the mission blue, that uses lupin. It's called a lek, L-E-K, great Scrabble word. But they use their host plant to also as a sex platform or a mating platform as well. Butterflies remain in cupola for less than a half an hour. She will fly off and have multiple partners before she lays her eggs. Now, one of the great moments of this season occurred on April 12th when a hairstreak landed at the corner of Kintyre and Funson, as well as the first sighting. Each season during its brief flight, I hope to add more and more pieces of the puzzle just to see how this will go. So I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Backyard hope. I went to a counterpulse talk, and I heard Kirsten Kierbleld of the San Francisco Parks Trust talk about a program that the city was starting for unused pieces of land in a neighborhood. This is at the corner of 14th and Pacheco. And again, this is what basically a lot of San Francisco, old San Francisco looks like now, covered in ice plant, and then this little unused sliver within this neighborhood. The funniest thing about ice plant, I gotta tell you, my dear friend Matt Zlatnich, who I did the book with, he's my age, 57, and he said, when I was a boy, we planted ice plant all over in Boy Scouts all over the Sunset District, and now he and his wife for CNPS are pulling it all out. Gotta love that. I think a few of you have done that as well. These pieces are a mini dune community, just sort of pull back what once was there. Now a female full of eggs blasting down the street in the cement jungle away from metapopulations, and boom, she finds this mini oasis. And again, just want to try, this might just be folly, and this also might just be triage, but trying to get this girl some plants that used to be completely spread throughout this neighborhood. A bonus was mentioned. So I heard about the street parks thing, and this is the application for the street parks. The main one I envision are seen here in pink. It's important that the stewards of each of these neighborhood parks are residents of the neighborhood. We contacted folks who expressed an interest in the walks to help on the project. This is directly across the street. These are called the aerial staircase. And now we have a full butterfly habitat along the right-hand side that's been planted all the way to the top. This is the aerial staircase. Okay, this is the first meeting of the Green Hairstreak project at Laura Castellini's home with Julia. Anybody notice Jake Sig there? Of course, Jake was one of the first champions of the Green Hairstreak project.
God, he's young there.
Yeah. Yeah, who's that kid next to him? Let's see. So we have now added students to the Green Hairstreak project. These are grad students doing distribution projects. It turns out to be a sublimely perfect place to study this one little butterfly. We're now adding fog indicators to see how the fog plays in on the Green Hairstreak corridor. And these are just some of the students. Groups come in to help us pull non-native weeds, and we can't sign up groups fast enough. I mean, the joy in the Green Hairstreak project, everyone should dream that there would be this kind of turnout for anyone's project. Matt Zlatnich of Yerba Buena CNPS is growing a lot of our plants. We have a major network of folks that are taking these sites that we're acquiring and turning them back in. So this is my other life. I'm an illustrator, and they let me do a sign for the San Francisco Rec and Park, and we got to incorporate the Green Hairstreak story into the project. Some of my paintings. Again, trying to connect a person, they see a green hairstreak, oh, that's a green hairstreak, I've heard about that. That first moment of stewardship. Okay. Finally, I kind of went fast, huh?
You're good.
Finally, I want to leave you with some other species that have precarious holds in their historic place in San Francisco. On the left is the smallest butterfly in the United States. And people don't realize it flies in the Bay Area. This is the western pygmy blue. Berthidium exile. This is the Sandhills Skipper. It's obligated to a marsh, and it uses Disticulus as its host. It's native saltgrass. This is the Sandhills Skipper. And on the right is the variable checker spot, which actually only had one population. It's weird, I haven't come back to this show for many years, but since this project has started, I created Operation Checker Spot, and we moved 1,500 of the variable checker spot back into the Presidio, where there's contiguous habitat. Butterflies need contiguous habitat. They either need a vertical corridor or a horizontal corridor. So if you have rhamnus and you have coastal scrub, and a lot of them won't even cross a street. We've got the pale tiger swallowtail on San Bruno Mountain, literally hits Geneva and turns around, whereas the western tiger will take to the streets and fly, but the other one needs rhamnus, and that's not in everybody's yard, right? Coffeeberry? So butterflies are finicky, and rightfully so. The western tiger, we moved Euphydrius chalcedon, the variable checker spot, the most abundant butterfly in the state of California. But she flies very low to the ground. She's very gravid. She almost walks if you see her, if you're hiking in the Sierras. They're sort of a lazy flyer. And we have moved them in. And again, at the time of this program, it was only one population left in San Francisco. So there's a lot of success with the variable checker spot. Now, this is what Pachinko looked like before, and this is what Pachinko looks like now. I want to leave you guys with this. It's a quote from Paul. Oh, I'm sorry, I killed it again. I leave you with this. I didn't kill it. It missed. I leave you with a quote from Paul Oppler's Field Guide for Western Butterflies, 1999. Quote, declining species. I wonder if I have this even. No. This is the gray hairstreak. This is the other hairstreak. This should be in all your backyards. She's a pretty cool generalist. What other pictures I have? Yeah, I'll leave this one right here. Declining species require intervention at several levels. And this might sound almost slightly naive since we've been listening to a project on the apocalypse and things disappearing. But in 1999, at first local populations may decline or disappear, while the second, a species may decline throughout much of its range. In the first instance, local citizens should call these changes to the attention of community leaders and conservation groups. Species or subspecies with naturally small ranges or narrow habitat preferences should be watched especially closely. This was the first green hairstreak that was observed at the Pachinko staircase. So it went from a vacant lot to actually a breeding colony within one season of just putting the right plants back. Oh, please, use pet voice. Come on, come on. This is the Mary Jester, myself, leading a group to the Pachinko staircase. And again, people can't get enough of this project. So I want to leave you with my dedication. This is to Harriet Reinhardt. She was a woman who lived in San Francisco, and I'm going to start tearing up, but there's just not enough girls in science. There's not enough women out there. And if, anyway, thank you very much.